She stood in the doorway like I was a stranger and said it flat. No hesitation, no respect. Go to a hotel. My parents are here. Not, please. Not, can we talk? Just an order. In the house I paid for, in the living room where my own son used to sit beside me and call me Dad. I looked past her shoulder and saw suitcases already unpacked, her mother's coat on my chair, her father's shoes by the door, like I had already been erased. And the worst part, my son didn't say a word. He just stood there, eyes down, like I was the one who didn't belong. I didn't argue. Not yet. I just nodded, slowly, like I understood. But something in me went cold right then, something final. Because I knew this wasn't about a visit, this was a takeover. My name is Walter Bennett. I'm 72 years old, and that house in Tulsa, Oklahoma, wasn't some gift from the bank or a lucky investment. I bought it after 41 years under diesel engines at the rail yard, with bad knees, a ruined shoulder, and enough missed holidays to fill a graveyard. When my wife, Linda, passed 3 years ago, that house got too quiet. My son Daniel said, "Come stay with us, Dad. We've got room." He said family ought to be together. I believed him because I still remembered the boy he used to be, before marriage turned every kindness into a negotiation. At first, it was small things. My daughter-in-law, Melissa, wanted the master bathroom redone. Then Daniel had temporary cash flow issues. Then her father needed help with a business setback. Every request came wrapped in soft voices and embarrassed smiles. Just till next month. Just while we get ahead. I wasn't foolish. I saw the pattern. But Daniel was my only son, and when a man gets old, he starts confusing love with usefulness. So I paid property taxes, the new roof after the hailstorm, half the down payment on Melissa's SUV. Even the lawyer when her younger brother got himself arrested outside Broken Arrow. Nobody ever said I had to. They just learned I would. What they didn't know was Linda had seen this coming before she died. One night in hospice, weak as a whisper, she squeezed my wrist and said, "Walter, one day they'll stop asking and start taking." Standing on that porch with my overnight bag in my hand, I realized that day had come. I made it all the way to my truck before Daniel finally stepped outside. He came down the walkway fast, not like a son chasing his father. More like a man afraid I'd remembered something he hoped stayed buried. And when he leaned down to my window, the first thing he said wasn't, "I'm sorry." It was, "Dad, don't do anything crazy." I looked at him through the glass, really looked this time, and I saw something I hadn't wanted to admit before. Not guilt, not even shame, just fear. The kind a man gets when the ground under him starts to shift. "Crazy?" I repeated, slow and even. "Daniel, I just got told to leave my own house." He rubbed the back of his neck, glancing over his shoulder like Melissa might be watching from behind the curtains. "It's not like that. Her parents just got here, okay? It's crowded. Temporary." Temporary. That word again. I'd heard it so many times that it started to sound permanent. I nodded once, like I accepted it. "Then you should have said that before I walked in and got treated like a trespasser." He didn't answer right away, just leaned his arms on the window frame, avoiding my eyes. That's something he'd learned over the years, how to stand near me without really facing me. "Look," he said finally, lowering his voice. "Melissa's under a lot of pressure right now. Her dad's situation is worse than we thought. There's legal stuff, money stuff. I just need you to not make this harder." Not make it harder. I let out a quiet breath and started the engine. "I'm not the one making anything harder, son." He straightened up then, something sharper creeping into his tone. "Then don't pull anything. No sudden decisions, no reactions." That word stuck with me. Reactions. Like I was some old machine that might break if pushed too far. "I'll get a hotel," I said. "You don't have to worry about me tonight." He nodded quickly, almost relieved. "Good. Yeah. Just for a couple days. We'll sort things out." I didn't say anything else. Just pulled out of the driveway slow, steady, like I had all the time in the world. But inside, something had already started moving, quiet and deliberate. I drove 10 minutes before I realized my hands were shaking. Not from anger, not exactly. From clarity. Because as I went over everything in my head, the car, the roof, the lawyer, the temporary loans, I started to understand something Linda had tried to warn me about. They hadn't just been asking. They'd been building something, piece by piece, using me as the foundation. And now, they were comfortable enough to push me out of it. I checked into a small hotel off Route 66. Nothing fancy. Clean bed, thin walls, a front desk clerk who didn't ask questions. I liked that. I sat on the edge of the bed for a long time, just staring at my hands. Then I reached into my jacket and pulled out a folded envelope I hadn't touched in months. Linda's handwriting was still there. Careful, steady, even at the end. I hadn't opened it since the funeral. Didn't have the strength back then. But that night, sitting alone in that quiet room, I finally did. And the first line inside made my chest tighten before I even finished reading it. Walter, if you're reading this, it means they've started treating you like you owe them something. I stopped right there, because suddenly, everything felt less like coincidence and a lot more like a plan. I sat there on that stiff hotel bed, the lamp casting that dull yellow light, and I read Linda's letter all the way through, slow, like every word weighed something. She knew, not guessed, not suspected. She knew. Line after line, she laid it out plain, the way she always did when she didn't want me hiding behind excuses. Daniel is a good man, Walter, but he's weak when it comes to people who push. And that girl, she doesn't push. She takes. I swallowed hard at that. Not because it shocked me, but because it didn't. She went on to list things I hadn't even connected myself. The way Melissa handled money. Always urgent, always complicated, always just out of reach unless someone stepped in. The way Daniel stopped calling unless there was a problem to solve. The way I started getting thanked less and expected more. Then came the part that made my hands go still. I made arrangements you don't know about yet, not to punish them, but to protect you. When the time comes, you'll understand why. Arrangements. I read that line 3 times. Linda had always handled the paperwork, trusts, accounts, insurance. She kept everything organized in that old oak cabinet back home. After she passed, I never had the heart to dig through it properly. I told myself there'd be time later. Sitting there in that motel room, I realized. Maybe she hadn't left me unprepared. Maybe I just hadn't been ready to see it. My phone buzzed on the nightstand. Daniel. I let it ring twice before answering. Yeah. His voice came fast, tight. Dad, we need to talk. We already did. No, I mean really talk. Things are complicated right now. I leaned back against the headboard. They've been complicated for a long time, son. There was a pause on the line. Then he lowered his voice. Melissa's parents, they're not just visiting. They might need to stay longer. Her dad's business is collapsing. There could be lawsuits. They need stability right now. Stability? I almost smiled at that. And where exactly do you think that stability comes from? I asked quietly. He didn't answer right away. I could hear him breathing, thinking. Look, he said finally. We've all helped each other over the years. No, I said, calm as ever. I helped. You got used to it. That landed. I could hear it in the silence that followed. Then his tone changed. Just a little. Sharper. Defensive. Are you seriously going to do this right now, after everything I'm dealing with? That was the moment it clicked, clear as daylight. It wasn't about what happened at the door. It wasn't even about respect. It was about timing. They needed me quiet, cooperative, predictable. Because something bigger was going on, something they hadn't told me yet. I glanced back at Linda's letter resting open beside me. Daniel, I said slowly, how bad is it? Another pause. Longer this time. And when he finally spoke, His voice wasn't defensive anymore. It was strained. "We might lose the house." I closed my eyes for a second, not surprised, just finished. Because right then, I understood exactly why I'd been asked to leave. Not because there wasn't room for me, but because they were about to ask for something they knew I might finally refuse. I didn't rush to answer him. I just sat there, phone to my ear, staring at the wall like I was looking straight through it, letting his words settle. "We might lose the house." That house. The one I helped pay for. The one my name was still tied to in ways he probably hoped I'd forgotten. "How close?" I asked. Another pause. Then, quieter. "Missed 2 payments, maybe 3 by next week. The bank's already calling." I nodded to myself, slow. "And Melissa's parents?" "They've got nothing," he said quickly. "Her dad's accounts are frozen. There's an investigation, something about misreported numbers. I don't even understand all of it yet." I did. You don't freeze accounts over paperwork mistakes. Not unless something deeper's wrong. "And you didn't think to tell me any of this before I walked into that house?" I asked. "It all happened fast," he said. "We were trying to figure it out." No, they were trying to manage me. I could hear it now. Every careful step, every delayed phone call, every "we'll talk later." They weren't overwhelmed. They were calculating. Because if I knew the full picture walking in, I might have said no before they were ready. "What exactly were you planning to ask me, Daniel?" I said, keeping my voice even. He didn't answer right away. And that silence, it said more than anything else. Finally, he let it out. "We need help, Dad." There it was. Not, "Can you help?" Not, "Would you consider?" Just need. "How much?" I asked. He exhaled like he'd been holding it in. "To stabilize everything, catch up the mortgage, handle the legal fees, give Melissa's parents some breathing room." He hesitated. 200,000. I let out a slow breath through my nose. 200,000. That wasn't help. That was a bailout. And suddenly, everything from that afternoon made perfect sense. The cold look, the order at the door, the silence from my son. They hadn't pushed me out because they didn't need me. They pushed me out so they could bring me back in on their terms. "Dad," he said, voice tight. "Are you there?" "I'm here. You've always helped us before. This is just bigger. That's all. Bigger." I glanced again at Linda's letter. At that line she wrote like she was sitting beside me now. "When the time comes, you'll understand." And I did. Clearer than I ever had. "Daniel," I said slowly, "tell me something." "Yeah?" "If I hadn't walked into that house today, if I hadn't seen how I was treated, would you have told me the truth before asking for that money?" He didn't answer. Didn't even try. I closed my eyes for a second. That was all I needed. "I'll think about it," I said. Relief flooded his voice immediately. "Okay, that's all I'm asking. Just think about it." But I wasn't finished. "Don't call me again tonight," I added. "I'll come by tomorrow." "Okay, yeah, that's good. We'll all be here. We'll all be here." I ended the call and set the phone down carefully. Then I reached for Linda's letter again, but this time I turned it over. There was something on the back I hadn't noticed before. A name, a law firm, and a handwritten note beneath it. "He knows everything. Go see him before you decide anything." I stared at that for a long time, because whatever Linda had set up, it wasn't just protection. It was leverage. And the next morning, before I stepped foot back into that house, I decided I wasn't going alone. I didn't go back to the house that morning. Not right away. Instead, I drove across Tulsa to a quiet office building I'd passed 100 times and never noticed. 3rd floor, brass plaque by the door. The same name Linda had written on the back of that letter. I sat in the parking lot for a minute before going in, steadying myself, because I already knew this wasn't going to be simple. The man who greeted me was in his late 50s, calm, professional, the kind of person who didn't waste words. "Mr. Bennett," he said, shaking my hand. "I've been expecting you. I just didn't know when." That stopped me for a second. "You've been expecting me?" He nodded once and gestured for me to sit. "Your wife came to see me before she passed. She wanted to make sure you'd be protected, in case certain situations developed." "Certain situations?" I let out a slow breath. "Looks like they did." He opened a file, thick, organized. Linda's handwriting clipped neatly into sections like she'd planned this down to the last detail. "Your wife transferred a significant portion of your assets into a protected trust," he said. "Irrevocable, quiet, completely outside of any joint or informal arrangements you may have had with your son." I felt something shift in my chest. "How much are we talking about?" He slid a paper across the desk. I stared at the number. It wasn't 200,000. It was closer to 2 million. I leaned back slowly, the weight of it settling in. "All this time," I muttered. "And I didn't even know." "She wanted it that way," he said. "She believed if you knew, you might feel obligated to use it, the way you've been using everything else." He wasn't wrong. "What about the house?" I asked. "That's where things get complicated," he said carefully. "The property your son lives in is still legally tied to you. The mortgage is partially in your name, which means if it defaults, I'm on the hook," I finished. "Yes." I nodded slowly. So that was it. Not just desperation, exposure. If that house went under, it wouldn't just be Daniel losing everything. It would drag me down with him. "They knew this," I said quietly. The lawyer didn't answer. He didn't need to. I sat there for a long moment, staring at that file, at Linda's careful planning, at the line she'd drawn long before I had the strength to. Then I asked the question that had been sitting in my chest since last night. "If I walk away, completely, what happens?" He folded his hands. "If you choose to separate yourself legally, restructure the remaining assets, you can protect everything that's left. And them." He met my eyes directly. "They would have to face the consequences of their own decisions." I nodded once. No anger, no hesitation, just clarity. By the time I left that office, the sun was already high, the air sharp and clean in a way I hadn't noticed in years. I got back in my truck and sat there for a moment. Then I picked up my phone and called Daniel. He answered on the first ring. "Dad, are you coming?" I looked straight ahead through the windshield, calm, steady. "I'm on my way," I said, and this time, I wasn't coming back as help. I was coming back as the man who finally understood everything. Because what they didn't know yet, what none of them knew, was that Linda hadn't just protected me. She had made sure that when this moment came, I would be the one holding all the power. I pulled into the driveway just before noon. Same house, same wide porch, same front door where I'd been told to leave like I was nothing more than a delivery man who overstayed his welcome. Only this time, I didn't hesitate. I walked up slow, steady, and knocked once. Melissa opened the door. Different expression now. No edge, no coldness. Just tight, controlled, like someone trying to manage a situation already slipping. "Walter," she said, forcing something close to a smile. "Come in." No apology. Not even now. I stepped inside anyway. Daniel was already in the living room, pacing, his shirt wrinkled, hair uncombed. The kind of look a man gets when sleep stops coming. Melissa's parents sat stiff on the couch, quiet, watching, waiting. "Dad," Daniel said quickly, stepping toward me. "Thanks for coming. We've been talking and—" "I'm not here to talk things through," I said, calm as ever. That stopped him. The room went still. I took a few steps forward, set my hat down on the table, right where her father's shoes had been the day before, and looked at all of them, one by one. Then I spoke. "I met with a lawyer this morning." Daniel's face changed instantly. Not confusion, recognition. Melissa's eyes flicked to him, sharp. "What lawyer?" she asked. "The one my wife trusted," I said. Silence dropped hard after that. Because now, they understood. I reached into my jacket and pulled out a single folded document. Not thick, not dramatic. Just enough. "I know about the mortgage," I said. "I know whose name is tied to it. I know what happens when it falls apart." Daniel swallowed. "Dad, we were going to explain—" "No," I said quietly. "You were going to ask." That hit harder. I let the words settle before continuing. "I also know about the trust Linda set up, the one you didn't know existed." That was the moment everything shifted. Melissa straightened. Her father leaned forward. Daniel went pale. "What trust?" he asked. I held his gaze. "The one that means I don't need this house, and I don't need to fix your mistakes." No one spoke, not a sound. You could feel it, the realization moving through the room, slow and heavy. The safety net was gone. I picked up my hat again. "I won't be paying your mortgage," I said. "I won't be covering legal fees. And I won't be supporting people who can't even offer me a place to sit in my own home." Melissa finally broke. "This is unbelievable," she snapped. "After everything we've been dealing with, you choose now to punish us?" I looked at her, steady, not angry. "This isn't punishment," I said. "This is the first honest decision I've made in years." Daniel stepped forward then, voice cracking. "Dad, if you walk away from this, everything falls apart." I nodded once. "I know." He stared at me, searching, hoping for something to soften. It didn't come, because something in me had already settled. Something final. I turned toward the door. Behind me, voices started rising, sharp, panicked, turning on each other faster than I expected. Accusations, blame, fear. I didn't look back. I just opened the door, stepped outside, and let it close behind me. And as I walked down that same path, the one I'd left from the day before, I heard Daniel shout my name. Not as a son, not as family, but like a man watching everything slip out of his control. I kept walking, didn't stop, didn't turn, because for the first time in a long while, I wasn't the one being pushed out anymore. If this story meant something to you, subscribe. There's more to come.